Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvigrinanti ye Bhurida Janaha. So, we were discussing the chapter Sri Ramakrishna with devotees at Dakshineshwar, and he is attending a performance of Chaitanya at Calcutta. So these are the two scenes where the conversation took place. And the date, as we saw, it was on Sunday, 21st September 1884. So conversation about Rakhal Narayan. Narayan was a boy, young boy, whom Sri Ramakrishna loved very much because of his spiritual quality. Nitya Gopal and younger Gopal. There were two Gopals. One was Budo Gopal, who was a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. That is why there was another Gopal. There were two Gopals. So the younger one was known as Choto Gopal or younger Gopal. So according to the Bengali calendar, it was the 6th day of Ashwin and 1291. That is the Bengali year, which according to the English calendar was Sunday, 21st September 1884. So a number of devotees have gathered in Sri Ramakrishna's room. Ram, Mahendra Mukherjee, Chunilal and many others are there. So Chunilal has just returned from Vrindavan. He and Rakhal went there with Balram. Balram Bose, as you all know, had many houses. There was one, he was a big zamindar, so he had a house in Vrindavan and also in Kothar in Orissa. And they had a estate in Orissa as well. So Rakhal and Balram had gone with Balram had gone with Rakhal, and Chunilal also had gone with them. So Thakur asks him about Vrindavan. What did he see in Vrindavan? The conversation is about Vrindavan now. So we will now see what conversation took place. The conversation is about Rakhal. Sri Ramakrishna is asking, because Rakhal, as you all know, was very close to Sri Ramakrishna. He was known as his Manas Putra. Manas Putra means the mind-born son. He liked him so much, and he was a favorite disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. So he asks Chunilal, because he has just returned from Vrindavan, he had gone on a pilgrimage with Balaram and Rakhal. So he's asking him, how is he doing? How is Rakhal doing there? Because Sri Ramakrishna had seen in a divine vision that he was born out of an ansha or a part of Krishna. He was a companion of Krishna. Rakhal means, literally it means a Gopala or a shepherd boy. So Rakhal means a shepherd boy who looks after the sheep, and or maybe he looks after the cows. So Gopala also means the same thing. Gopala, Rakhala. So Rakhal was Sri Ramakrishna saw that in his vision that Rakhal was a companion, a very close companion of Sri Krishna in the previous birth. So he is asking Chunilal, how is Rakhal? Chunilal says, sir, he is all right now. Sri Ramakrishna asks, is Nitya Gopal coming back? Nitya Gopal was another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna who had gone with Balram and Rakhal. So he said, isn't he coming back? Because Chunilal came back, so he was asking whether Nitya Gopal is coming back. So Chunilal says, he is still there. I saw him before I left. So Sri Ramakrishna is asking, who is accompanying your wife and the others? Chunilal has come alone. So Sri Ramakrishna is worried that who will come, who will bring your wife and the other women who had also gone. So Chunilal says, Balram Babu said that a good and suitable person would be sent to accompany them. He didn't give a name. So Thakur now speaks to Mahendra Mukherjee about Narayan. Narayan was a young boy, 16 or 17 years old. So he used to visit Thakur off and on. And Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of him because he was very guileless. So, as he says, Sri Ramakrishna, as he just mentions about the characteristic of Narayan, he says Narayan is so guileless. In Bengali, the word used is Saral. Saral means one who is guileless is also known as Saral. So he who is guileless, I mean, Mahendra also agrees. He says, yes, sir, he is very guileless. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, he compares him with his mother. Narayan's mother, however, was a very crooked or a very egotistic lady. So Sri Ramakrishna immediately compares this wonderful boy who is a very guileless or a very simple person with his mother, who was very shrewd and full of ego. He says his mother came the other day. I was frightened to find her so egotistical. She found out that you and Captain visit here. You means Mahendra. He's telling Mahendra that she has somehow found out that Captain Upadhyay was also a great devotee. So she has found that you and Captain visit here. She must have definitely thought that I and Narayan were not the only ones who come to the temple. All laugh. There was some sugar candy in the room. Seeing that, she said, oh, nice sugar candy that is. She was a very worldly type of person. Her interest was mainly in what type of food people eat. So she must have concluded from that there is no dearth of food here. So what really mattered to her was not Sri Ramakrishna's spirituality, but what is the type of food that is available here. My son comes here, so maybe does he come to the right place? Is it a place where people are fed nicely? So she was happy because she saw some very costly sugar candy. So seeing that, she must have concluded that, oh, this is a good place. Then perhaps Sri Ramakrishna later on remembers that I said to Baburam in her presence, please keep some sandesh for Narayan and yourself. I mean, he's telling Baburam because Narayan they knew that Narayan may come. And he was so fond that he used to keep some sweets for those disciples whom he loved or whom he liked. So he says, please keep some sandesh for Narayan and yourself. Ganu's mother and some other women said, oh God, he bothers his mother to pay the ferry charges to come here. I mean, now they are complaining about Narayan. That Narayana, boy Narayana, who obviously was 16, 17 years old, he would not be earning anything. So if he has to come to Dakshineshwar, he has to cross the river by boat, then he needs some money. So he used to beg, request his mother, bother his mother. And so the other women are maybe making fun or criticizing that boy. So he pesters his mother and asks her for a few pennies ferry charges to cross the river. That means they are not very pleased. Why should this young boy come? That is the idea with most grown-up women and grown-up parents. They think what's the younger children should be busy with their career and busy with their studies, and when they come of in those days 17 years or 18 years, he would be married off to a young girl. So they would be bothered about his marriage and other things. And they thought it was unusual for a young boy of 16 or 17 to come to Sri Ramakrishna and come here and think about spiritual matters. So his mother once said to me, Sri Ramakrishna says, please ask Narayan to marry. Because perhaps he was refusing to get bound to the world. So he was saying, I don't want to marry. So the mother of Narayan, who had come here and whom Sri Ramakrishna found to be full of ego and a very worldly mentality, she says, why don't you tell him to marry? Please ask him, Narayan, to marry. Then Sri Ramakrishna was his own humble self. He said, what can I do? It all depends on his destiny. Why should I interfere in all these matters? So everybody started laughing. Means Sri Ramakrishna used to very carefully avoid And not that he would say that, no, why do you force him to marry or something. He said, I don't interfere. This is not a topic that is being discussed, is often discussed. That is not at all discussed here. If it is his destiny, he will marry. If it is his destiny, then he'll not marry. So why I don't interfere in these things? Then Narayan's mother complains. She said he doesn't work hard in his studies. So she said, please ask him to study hard. Said, okay, you will not ask him to marry, but at least ask him to study hard. I said to Narayan, you must study hard. Then she again said, please tell him more emphatically. Then all laughed. So the mother knew that Sri Krishna is just repeating what his mother is saying. He perhaps is not very serious. So he says, so you have to tell him emphatically, otherwise he is neglecting his studies. So she is asking Chunilal, well, why doesn't Sri Krishna is asking Chunilal, why doesn't Gopal come? So Gopal means the younger Gopal. Choto Gopal or the younger Gopal. Elder Gopal was Budo Gopal, who later on became Swami Advaitananda. But she is telling Chunilal, Sri Krishna is asking Chunilal, why doesn't Gopal come nowadays? Then Chunilal replies that he has blood diarrhea. Then Sri Krishna was a bit worried. He said, does he take any medicine? Then he was a bit worried and he made inquiries that why doesn't he take medicine if he has blood dysentery or blood diarrhea. Now the recording ends here, and now M is recording something where Sri Krishna is going to visit the Star Theatre started by Girish Chandra Ghosh, and he was going to go there. They had planned that he will be go there, planned that he'll be going there and watching the Chaitanya Leela that was planned. Chaitanya Leela is a life of Sri Chaitanya in dramatic form. That was the drama that was being enacted by Star Theatre, and the movie and the play or the drama was written by Girish Chandra Ghosh and enacted by a lot of courtesans. The most of the women who acted, even the role of Chaitanya was played by a woman. So most of them were courtesans and dancers, because people from good families normally they did not become actors, especially women. Men would become, but women, there was some reservation, and people thought that if you belong to a good family, you should not be acting in these dramas, especially in the Star Theatre. So most of the courtesans who came there, they used to play these roles, and some of them were really good actresses. They used to play the role of even a male character, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he will go with Mahendra Mukherjee, who is another devotee, not Mahendra Gupta, who is M. This is another Mahendra Mukherjee who has a carriage. He will be going there with Mahendra Mukherjee in his carriage to see the play. Now they are discussing whether they should sit to get a good view. Somebody suggested that let us book a seat by paying a rupee. That was considered to be a box office, a box seat. There was a place in the theater where there was a special box for VIPs. You had to pay a higher charge. So some devotee suggested, let us take Thakur to the box so that he'll have a good view. He should not be sitting with other people. Ram says, why? We will take a box. Definitely we'll take a box. So Ram and others are now supposed to go to attend this play of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they are taking Sri Krishna with him. So Sri Krishna laughs, hearing the discussion that they are making arrangements for Sri Krishna to sit in a box. They don't want their guru to sit with the other people who are common people who have come to watch the play. They want to make some special arrangement, and Thakur just smiles. Somebody says courtesans act in this place. I mean, the people who are enacting the role of Chaitanya and other characters, though the play is a devotional play, divine play, a very nicely written play, and a noble play, not some kind of cheap entertainment, but the people who act in them, they are courtesans. So they will be playing the role of Chaitanya, Deva, Nitai, and others. All the saints, whether they are male or female, all the characters will be acted out. I mean, the roles will be played by these courtesans who were women. So let them act as Chaitanya Deva. Sri Ramakrishna said, it doesn't matter who is the actor. I shall look upon them all as the all blissful mother. Let them act as Chaitanya Deva, seeing an imitation custard apple. This is a famous quote of Sri Ramakrishna. He says, when you see an imitation custard apple made of a dry plant, sola, one has the feeling of a real custard apple. So sometimes we make this imitation custard apple or some imitation fruits which are kept. People, they are made so nicely that they appear to be real. Unless you touch them, you don't understand whether they are real or they are artificial. So he says, what is wrong? They are acting as Chaitanya Deva. So even though they may not have the qualities of Chaitanya Deva, if you imitate a great person or a great personality, some of the qualities, some good happens to you. They may be courtesans. So Sri Ramakrishna doesn't want to criticize these actors. The actors who are playing the role of Chaitanya Deva, he says they are blessed. They may or may not be noble people, because in those days, noble, especially women who belong to a noble family, did not take part, did not act in these dramas. They had to be enacted by courtesans and women from that walk of life. So Sri Ramakrishna says, doesn't really matter, because if they play the role of Chaitanya Deva, they will be repeating the dialogues of Chaitanya, they will be repeating holy words, and that imitation custard apple will remind one of the real custard apple, the real Chaitanya. So that was a positive attitude Sri Ramakrishna had. And he looked upon all of them, as he said, any woman, he looked upon these women as they are all manifestations of the all blissful mother. And that is the attitude with which he went to watch this drama of Chaitanya Deva enacted in Star Theatre, which belonged to Girish Chandra Ghosh. A devotee walking on the road saw a number of babul trees. The devotee was instantly absorbed in bhava. Now Sri Ramakrishna is giving an example that how by seeing certain things. Now we were discussing the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is also known as Vibhuti Yoga. In that Vibhuti Yoga, you will find Sri Krishna is comparing. He says, among the trees I am Ashwatha, among the animals I am Lion, among the words I am Om, the primal sound. So he is considering the best among all possible species. So the best among all possible species, the best among flowers, the best among lakes, the best among Himalayas. So best amongst the sthavara, that is the immovable ones. The best among the immovable ones is the Himalayan range. So if you remember these great natural splendors, that should remind you of God. So Sri Ramakrishna gives an example that if you see an imitation custard apple, no doubt it is imitation. It reminds you of the real tree, the real custard apple. So he says, similarly, devotee saw a number of babul trees. Many of us see babul trees, but if the mind is ready, it can make that act sacred. He said the devotee was instantly absorbed in bhava. How? Just by seeing babul tree. He had not seen God or anything, but neither had he gone to a temple. But how can he have bhava? How can he be immediately absorbed? Because he remembered that the beautiful handle of the spade in garden of Sham Sundar, Krishna, is made of the same wood. it it at once brought the thought of Sham Sundar to his mind. When they took, so this, you see how the human mind makes the connection. So in the garden of Sham Sundar, that is Krishna's, so there was a temple there. Perhaps in that garden there was a spade, and this devotee would have been working with that spade. Now that wood belonged, he knew that wood, the handle of that spade was made of babul tree. So seeing the babul tree, his mind connected itself to the beautiful handle of the spade in the garden of Sham Sundar. And from that spade, or from that axe or spade, the mind went to Sham Sundar, Krishna, who is the deity of the temple. So from the garden, from the tree, he went to the garden, and that remote connection somehow brought the thought of Sham Sundar or Sri Krishna to his mind. Similarly, he says, when they took me to the Fort Maidan is a place in Calcutta, the British Calcutta, to see the balloon. Though in those days, the rich people of Calcutta would ride a balloon. Balloon was newly invented. They used to heat that balloon, the gas below the balloon, and the balloon would slowly rise as the gas heated. The balloon went up, and then they would have a balloon ride. So a European boy was standing against a tree with his body bent at three places. He was not standing straight. So immediately he was inspired with Krishna, because one of the names of Sri Krishna is Bake Bihari. Bake means whenever he used to play the flute, they say he used to stand in a very peculiar way, and his body would be bent in three places. In three different places, it would be bent. He would lean against a tree, maybe a bakul tree or any other tree. And in that posture, the young boy, the 14-year-old Krishna in Vrindavan used to play. And Sri Ramakrishna, when he just saw this European boy, he says, I went into Samadhi, because the thought of Krishna came. He did not see the boy as a white boy or as a European boy. The beginning he saw him as a European boy, but the posture that he had adopted unconsciously suggested to him the form of Bake Bihari, Krishna, which we can read in the scriptures. So the idea of Krishna, or the idea of Bake Bihari, which is also Krishna, came when Sri Ramakrishna saw, and when he saw this European boy who was standing in a similar position. So even when these courtesans, what Sri Ramakrishna wants to convey is that they may be courtesans, they may be ordinary women, but when they play the role of Chaitanya, the dialogues that they utter, the role that they enact in the divine drama of Chaitanya Leela, that should remind you of Chaitanya himself, and that should lead you to a spiritual experience, as Sri Ramakrishna himself experienced. Even the most ordinary things that association with the divine was very important in his life. Somehow we would associate everything and connect it to the divine. That is the goal of life, as Swami Vivekananda once told his disciple, that the goal is to manifest the divinity within and make it manifest in every moment of life. Whatever we do, there should be a touch of the divine involved in that. So then he gives a few examples where most ordinary objects, ordinary things reminded one of the God, or of the deity whom he worshipped. Many people know the story. I mean, we all know the story that Chaitanya Deva, Sri Ramakrishna is quoting that story from Chaitanya's life. Chaitanya Deva was passing by the Meda village. He was told that they make khol, drum used in kirtan, with the clay from this village. So the khol, or the drum which they usually play in the kirtan, is made for a special type of clay. And that clay was available in this Meda village. So just by hearing that the mud of the clay was used, the mud or the clay was used to make the drum, khol, which was used in kirtan, with which one would take Chaitanya's name. So the association of the even the simple thing as mud of a particular village reminded him of Chaitanya Deva. So seeing a cloud or the neck of a peacock, Radha could not control herself. She would overcome with the presence of Sri Krishna and lose all outer consciousness. So Thakur became silent when he is discussing about these glorious states. So after some time he resumes the conversation and says, Radha's Mahabhava, the prema or intense love of the gopi was totally desireless. If one has to have that kind of Mahabhava or also that which was known as prema or intense love, it is a very, very high form of bhakti. The intense love the gopis had for Sri Krishna. Gopis and Radha, of course, was the leader among the gopis. So she experienced Mahabhava because of the genuine devotion she had. And what does that devotion, to whom does that devotion come to? The gopis who were desireless. So one of the important conditions a of prema or to develop that divine love is that pure love for God is one should be free from desire. If one has any worldly desire, then that devotion is not pure. One will not ask for occult powers or any other power or any other problem to be solved. They were happy with whatever they had. So, whatever powers people aspire for, they have to be thrown away aside. If there is a desire for any kind of achievement using the devotion or the rituals with which we worship the Lord, if there is any desire, selfish desire in the mind, then it will never be called as pure devotion or prema. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying it is only the Radha and the gopis. The gopis who was led by Radha had that kind of love. They loved Sri Krishna just for the sake of loving. They didn't expect anything from him. In fact, he was just 13 or 14 years old and they were all grown-up women. But still they loved Sri Krishna. And when he went away, they didn't expect. They continued to love him even though he was not present there. That kind of divine love, which is one-sided love, we don't expect anything in return. Though Sri Krishna never came back to Vrindavan, they were happy because they had Sri Krishna, they had loved him. So with that love, they could become great premis. All the prema which Sri Ramakrishna refers to here is not possible if you have desires. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, occult power brings great trouble. So, Tutapuri once counseled me saying, a man who had occult powers was sitting on the seashore. So, this is an example, Sri Ramakrishna, a parable Sri Ramakrishna used to narrate. This parable shows that how occult powers, if they are not, if by sadhana, if you get some mystical powers, or it is very difficult to use it wisely. And even if you use it wisely, some mishap may occur and that will lead to your ruin. So this example was taught to Sri Ramakrishna by Totapuri. We'll see what that example was. Sri Ramakrishna says, once Totapuri counseled me, he warned him, he said, a man he told him a story, and through this parable or through this story, he wanted to explain what happens if powers are misused, or if some sadhaka gets some powers, and if he tries to apply those powers, then a great harm may befall the people who are using that. So he says a person who had a lot of occult powers was sitting on the seashore. He was meditating. He had some strange powers with which he could do many things. So the sea became stormy. Afraid that the storm would harm him, the man said, let the storm halt at once. So he had that power over nature. Here it's just a story, but the story is very significant because Tutapuri said, see, this is what happens. So because of his spiritual power, because of his tapasya, his words could not remain unfulfilled. And a ship with a mast was passing. When the storm died down abruptly, it is like putting a brake on a car. Something is moving violently and you just stop it. Then there is a chance that it will crash or it will overturn. So the same thing happened. The storm died down because of the powers used by this man who has had occult powers, this sadhaka. And when the storm suddenly stopped, he said, "Let the storm stop." And when the storm died down so abruptly, the whole ship sank. The ship with the mast sank, and all the passengers occupying the ship went down with it. He did not intend to do it. But you see, wrong use of power, he should have just had some patience. He wanted to, out of fear, he said, "Let me use the power and stop the storm." But he didn't realize by doing that, he killed so many people. So Sri Ramakrishna says that Tutapuri told him that the sin resulted not only in losing his occult powers, whatever powers he had that was withdrawn, that went away because of so much of bad karma, which even though it was unintentional, he says he had this mishap or this sin which he committed made him go to hell. So that was the result. If one does not know how to use the powers, that occult powers that one gets as a result of sadhana, then it's better not to use it. Then she says, a sadhu possessed many occult powers. Sri Ramakrishna still continued. This also made him very proud. But this man was basically a good fellow and had a lot of tapasya to his credit. So Bhagavan once came, Lord himself wanted to save him. Said, see, he has become proud. He is a real good sadhaka, but after doing a lot of sadhana, a little pride has entered. So Bhagavan himself was worried that he's such a nice devotee, he should not suffer. So Bhagavan once came to him disguised as a sadhu and said, Maharaj, he just came as ordinary sadhu, that I have heard that you acquired many occult powers. The sadhu asked him cordially to sit down. Then just an elephant was passing that way. The second sadhu was praising the sadhu because he had these wonderful powers of giving birth, killing somebody or bringing them back to life. He had that power of life. So the second sadhu said, well, Maharaj, can you kill this elephant which is passing by your mere wish? They say you have powers. You just show me that you can kill that elephant. The first sadhu said, yes, it is possible. So he took a little dust and then said a few mantras and threw it on the body of the elephant. And it died. It died. The visitor sadhu then told him, oh, you have killed the elephant. Now you bring it back. Using your powers, you bring it back to life. Saying so, he again took some mud, some dust, and sprinkled it and recited some other mantra which brought back life. He had that power. He could kill at will. He could bring somebody back to life at will. So saying so, he muttered a few words and threw the dust on the elephant. It staggered up. It started getting up. The elephant which had died because of the power of the mantra again could be revived by this person. So the other sadhu said, what a powerful man you are. But I ask you one question. You are a very powerful man. With some mantras and with some dust, you could kill an elephant. At the same time, you could revive that elephant, bring him back to life also. Oh, you got such a wonderful power. Then, but he says, but there is a point here. There is a problem here. What spiritual progress you have been able to achieve by doing this? The elephant was anyway alive. You killed it with your power, of course, and wasted a lot of spiritual energy. But anyway, you brought him back to life. So the situation has come back to square one. You may have brought him back to life, but what is the point in killing him and then bringing that elephant back to life? So he says, what is the spiritual progress you have made? Your whole life has been spent in developing a power which makes you look so foolish. You killed that elephant and you made it live. He was living anyway. So why did you waste that power? That which has come as a result of so much of sadhana. So that's why he says, the sadhu told him this, and hopefully he later on changed. He did not use the powers to either kill or to revive somebody. He understood the folly. So after all, what did I gain? The elephant died and the elephant was brought back to life. That's fine. I have that power. But what does it make? What difference did it make in my life? Have I been able to uh, get peace in my mind or lead a happy life? No. I just have a life where I have developed some power and I use it or misuse it and then come to grief. So religion is a very delicate matter. Sri Ramakrishna says, even the smallest trace of desire, if it is there, it can stop you from attaining Bhagwan. Don't think by just doing bhakti you'll reach him. You need to have a mind which is absolutely desireless. So a thread does not, and then he gives an example, Sri Ramakrishna. He says, if you take a small thread, the thread will not pass through the eye of the needle if its end has any fibers sticking out. So these fibers which are sticking out does not enable somebody to put the thread through the eye of the needle. And if the fibers are all scattered, you have to sharpen it and then put the thread and then pull it. So he says the thread does not pass through the eye of a needle if its end has many fibers sticking out. So if we have desires, the different strands of the thread are like different desires. So the more the strands of the thread are there, the moment you try, that's why they try to sharpen the end of the thread which has to be inserted. It has to be very sharp. But if you keep the thread of desire, that is, if you keep the thread, do not sharpen its end, then it will not pass through the needle. So if any of the fibers of the thread are sticking out, then it will not enter the eye of the needle. So that is what's the fact is that one becomes proud if one possesses occult powers. So these occult powers are like the distracted threads of a big thread, a thread which will pass through the eye of the needle. So there are some fibers which are not sharpened, and unless you make it one pointed, our mind is also like that. If it has too many desires, it will not pass through the eye of the needle. Passing through the eye of the needle means reaching the goal, achieving that for which we live in this world. So then Sri Ramakrishna use another example. These are all examples which show the futility of going after certain powers or certain skills which can come as a result of meditation, japa, and all this bhakti and all those things. So that entice a person. A person is enticed when he comes across these techniques which enables him to have power in life. And that's occult power. They are known as occult power. So it is not an impossible thing. Sri Ramakrishna says these occult powers are there. But they are not for a real sadhaka, because it makes the sadhaka forget its own goal, his or her own goal. If you forget the goal because the fibers are hanging out, the fibers are diversified fibers, do not allow the thread to pass through the needle, eye of the needle. So then Sri Ramakrishna says, a cross-eyed gentleman came to see me. He said, it's good that you are a Paramahamsa. Please perform Sarvasthananda, a religious practice for attainment of worldly desire, for me. So he's coming to Sri Ramakrishna and asking him, because you are a Paramahamsa, if you practice this particular religious practice to satisfy some of the worldly desires that I have, please do it. That is what commercial priests do. They will do some religious practice, they'll do some yajna, some homa for the sake of somebody's worldly desire. Somebody wants the child is not born, or somebody is sick, we want to cure him or her. So all these different desires, worldly desires, people seek to fulfill them by performing different rituals and pujas and other things. So Sri Ramakrishna was terribly upset. He said, What a man of low intelligence. He's coming, a Paramahamsa, does he feel that a Paramahamsa should practice all this ritualistic foolishness? It is an occult power if one cures a person by performing Sarvasthananda. Pride stops you from entering the Lord. Once you do that, pride slowly comes. That as a result of practice of these sadhana, these powers may come, these distractions may come. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying, and that will make you proud also. Please don't fall into a trap. Then you can never reduce the ego and realize God. Then he says, do you know what is it to be a proud person? Then Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example. You see how many examples he is giving from our day-to-day life. Every one of us has seen a high mound where water gets collected. He says, say there is a high mound. You will see that it cannot hold rainwater. The rainwater just runs off. Water may fall on the big mound, but it will not stay on the top. It will just slide and come down. On the other hand, low land holds water. Wherever the land is low, there more water is there. On the top of the mountain, they think they are majestic. They are full of pride that we are at the top and all the rest of the earth is below. So he says, the top of the hill will never hold rainwater. But it is always good to be humble, because those who are at the bottom, all the spirituality or the energy of life. Water is the energy of life. Rainwater is like life-giving. It is life-giving to the entire creation. So also the grace of Lord, if we use it, if a person is full of ego, then he can't hold on to the divine powers or the divine, the divinity which is there, or when he is worshipping, that divinity which he wants to be imbibed within himself. He wants that divinity for himself. Then he should avoid all these things. He should avoid the ego, because just as the water does not stagnate, or water cannot be stored on the top of a hill. So if you have pride, if you have an ego, then your bhakti gets affected. One has to be humble. That is why they say the lower land, the low land holds the water, not the high lands, the lands which are high up. The water simply gets stored below. So it says it helps plants to germinate and grow into trees. The trees later bear fruits. So you see the usefulness of water at lower levels. So if we go with ego, we don't get benefit of spiritual practices. That is the idea. So Sri Ramakrishna says, just as water does not stay for long on the top of a hill, it will just slide and come down. But it will get filled up at lower places. The rainwater is used, and that you can grow crops, you can plant. We allow them to germinate and grow trees. The trees will later bear fruit. So much of punya we do by being humble. If we are humble, the grace of God can be perceived, or it becomes a reality with us. So that is the idea of giving this example, parable, or this examples, simile, where Sri Ramakrishna says that just as water does not collect on the top of a hill, collects at the bottom. So also, if you think you are on top of the world, that ego makes you feel that you have nothing to achieve, then it is a bad sign. You have to be humble. You may have achievements, that doesn't mean, but one need not be proud about it. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is telling here. And then you get the fruits. They not only help to grow the trees, but once the trees grow, you get a lot of fruits. Perennially, you get a lot of fruits. So the idea here is that through conservation of rainwater, that is the physical idea behind it, but here it means conserve your spiritual energy. Just as a dam or a mound does not hold water, but on low land you can store. You can use that water to germinate. it will help plants to germinate, it can grow into trees, and the trees will later give fruits. So Sri Ramakrishna says, be humble. One who is humble will realize God because he'll get the grace. Everything will slide down the top of the hill, a mound. The water will always accumulate in humble places. So if you have humility, the gods of grace, the God's grace, the Lord's grace will come to us. Now the next topic is love all. Love dispels egoism and leads to God realization. Another way to tackle our ego is to love everybody. If you have a very strong ego, the more our ego is strong, the more we hate. The more we want to be exclusive, the less we are inclusive. We just want to be, our ego does not permit us to meet people who are lesser than us. That is one kind of snobbery. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says, I tell Hajra, don't think that you alone understand everything and that everyone else is a fool. So Sri Ramakrishna Hajra was a person who had left his house. Though Sri Ramakrishna said, you did a wrong thing. You have wife and children. They will not be looked after by your in-laws. It's a shame that you don't work enough. So he practically had given up home. So, but he used to imitate, at least try to do some sadhana with his bead, and he used to give lot of guide. At least he thought he was wise enough to train all the disciples. Many times he used to interfere. So he once told Hajra, Sri Ramakrishna told Hajra, don't think that you alone understand everything and that everyone else is a fool. Because he made many comments about many other saints, and even against Sri Ramakrishna used to complain or tell all sorts of falsehoods. So Sri Ramakrishna says, I told Hajra, don't do this. Don't think that you alone understand everything. This creation is very complex. If you are intelligent, there may be more intelligent people than you. So don't think you only understand everything and everybody is a fool. You must love everyone. Nobody is a stranger. Hari dwells in all beings. The same divinity is inside all the beings. So nothing exists without him. And then he gives the example of Prahlada. The Bhagavan said to Prahlada, ask for a boon. Prahlada replied, I have had your vision. He's telling Narsimha Avatar, the God who descended as a half man, half lion, Narasimha Avatar. So Prahlada said, if you want to grant me a boon, then please don't punish those who have troubled me. So that was such a noble prayer. As Jesus used to say, Father, forgive them for they know not what they are doing. He forgave all the people who had killed him. So also Sri Ramakrishna is quoting that Prahlada, though Lord tried to tempt him by asking him, you ask for a boon, I can give you anything you come to. He said, no, I just want to go to, I had your vision, I don't need anything. Then Bhagavan would not listen. Then Prahlad said, if you want to grant me a boon, then please don't punish those who have troubled me. So he was so noble. Sri Krishna was insisting. Bhagavan was insisting. Vishnu was insisting that he should ask for a boon. He was so pleased with his devotion. Boon. But then that boon, Nachiketa said, I don't want. I have seen you. That is the greatest boon you can give me. I'm happy with that. But if at all you want to give a boon, that there will be many people who troubled me. I want one assurance, not for myself. I want an assurance that they will live. Even those who have troubled me should not suffer on account of their karma. So that is what Prahlada said. It means that it was Lord Hari himself who had inflicted troubles on him. By harming those people, one would be harming the Lord himself. So we come to a conclusion here of this particular section. So he says, Lord Hari, if you have the feeling that everything is done by God, then when you are in trouble, when things don't go your way, you should be very calm. So, and you should not react because there is no end to reaction. If you try to take revenge and try to subdue somebody or harm somebody, then the demerit or the sin will come to us. That is the idea. So by harming those people, He says, those people means those who inflicted pain. Even Swami Vivekananda was not keen to uh, uh, take revenge for not revenge exactly, but he did not even protest that he was misunderstood, he was troubled. Those who inflict troubles on him, he was a very broad heart, and he didn't expect every one of his disciples to respect him. Whatever happened, he was happy with that. So he literally followed that rule when he said, by harming those people, one would be harming the Lord himself, since the Lord is residing in the hearts of all. So now, if there are some questions, there's a new chapter now. Sri Ramakrishna is talking about caste differentiation and jnana, but we don't have time. So if there is somebody who would like to ask a question, I'll just take up. Yeah, I once read a book on occult powers and the use that many powerful people try to make out of them for their own worldly objectives. And the author said that the occult rituals often bring a backlash against those who perform them. Does it make sense? Yes, any karma which was done either to harm somebody or misuse the occult powers will ultimately result. I mean, as a specific case you have asked that the author said the occult will bring a backlash against those who perform them. Does it make sense? Yeah, so these people who have been trained to perform certain occult things, if they misuse it, the problem is if they misuse it, the whole karma will come back to them. They cannot escape. The law of karma is binding on everybody, whether you believe in it or not. It is very rational to assume that this thing exists. So we do not know how the Lord has designed this world. If we try to harm others, as Sri Ramakrishna said, then it will come back to us. So in that sense, it does really make sense when you ask that the backlash that you see is because of the fruition of the karma. So in the beginning, he will feel that I have these powers, let me use it for my benefit, but ultimately the karma catches with you and you suffer. So in that sense, this paragraph has been written. So yes, if one is retired and lives alone, it seems there is a risk of developing unripe ego. Please comment. No, why should the unripe ego come? Risk is always there. If one is retired, it comes to everybody. It comes to a young person. It comes to anybody at any time. But if one always sees all one's actions as a worshipful service of the Lord, that one is always keen to see the Lord in everything, then this problem does not arise. This question itself does not arise, whether you are retired or not, whether a person really staying alone by itself does not bring about a raw ego. It is only when you do not direct your thinking towards a Ishta or a Lord, and you consider yourself as the sadhana goes on as very humble, as somebody who is depending on grace of the Lord to come up, to achieve, evolve spiritually. If that attitude is there, then I don't think ego will come. So there are no more questions. Now I'll take your leave. Now we have discussed a lot today. Now we're coming to the third chapter, the third section, which is that people considered Sri Ramakrishna to be mad because he was full of emotion, full of sadhana, and the caste differentiation. There are certain things, the caste and all, they are very tricky questions, whether one should believe in caste or not. So Sri Ramakrishna will answer, and we'll see the dialogue that takes place. So on one side there are these Gyanis, and the other side there are ritualists who believe in caste, who believe that society will be benefited if we follow this particular system. It was designed by some sociologists. But Sri Ramakrishna says this caste differentiation, how to overcome it? Only if one has jnana, has a knowledge which will make you feel that you are an equal among all the other equals. You're not something, uh, you you don't have any special privilege over somebody else, though at times we behave like that, and we try to look down upon people. So one has to avoid, and by harming them or wishing them uh, not well, by not wishing them well or wishing them that bad things that should happen to them because of some jealousy, then it will finally boomerang on us and we will suffer. So I'll take your leave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.